everyone. I think you heard me. Thanks for coming. My name is Mike Webb, and I'm the coordinator for the Tam High PTSA Parent Education. And we're going to start off the meeting by hearing from the boss, Principal Senyard. Come on up.
Thank you everyone for coming, and we appreciate your support as always, especially when we're dealing with very serious issues regarding drugs and alcohol. And again, thank you so much for coming. The other thing, I am doing one other little plug. Tomorrow night we are having an informational meeting again about some of our curriculum work that we've been doing at 6:30, and we're moving the location to the Ruby Scott Gym. So if anybody's coming to that, just want to give you a heads up for that. And without further ado, let's hear from our incredible panel. Thank you.
So welcome and thanks for coming. The more conversation we have in our communities, the more successful we're going to be in changing harmful behavior, both on our children's part and on the part of adults. When you join your PTSA and contribute money, presentations like this one tonight are made possible, so thanks for your support. I want to welcome our friends from Redwood High School and Mill Valley Middle School. Tonight is another effort to join together and collaborate on addressing the many issues of parenting that we all face. Do we have Redwood parents here tonight? Great. And Mill Valley Middle School? Get some? Great. Good. Nice to see you all. I want you to know that a lot is happening in Marin to address the problems of alcohol and other drugs. Novato and Twin Cities have community coalitions aimed at education and prevention that have been operating for some time. Mill Valley and West Marin have just started coalitions to do the same, and this is all from county funding. In Mill Valley, it will be called the Healthy Living Community Coalition. So you're going to be seeing things in the newspaper about that as they ramp up in the next 4 months to establish their processes. The idea is to include Southern Marin and not just make it a Mill Valley thing, but it'll be run through the city of Mill Valley. The Principal Senyard has rebooted the Tam High Alcohol and Other Drug Task Force, and many of us active on the task force are also part of the community coalition. Efforts are now underway to establish a Friday night live chapter at Tam Valley High, so we're working on that as well. And the Tam High Foundation is going to sponsor a speaker next fall just for the students in an all-school assembly. The current Tam News has just had a cover story about students in recovery that many of you might have seen, and if you haven't, I'd recommend it to you. And a county task force has been formed to address prescription drug abuse in the county. That was in the headlines just a few days ago in the Marin IJ. And finally, we're gathered here tonight to talk. We're going to hear briefly from our speakers, and then the floor will be open for discussion. Questions can be placed. If you want to ask a question anonymously, you can do that, or just go ahead and ask. We wanted to give you at least that opportunity to do that. We've also provided a booklet from the community of concern as a resource for you. And additionally, Bruce has provided some information on the back table for you, pamphlets and other information there as well. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our speakers tonight. Bruce Goldberg has been a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 24 years. He's a father of 3 children in the Mill Valley schools and currently is the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the DEA's San Francisco Field Division. He is very active with the Tam High Alcohol and Other Drug Task Force and often speaks at events in Marin County having to do with substance use and abuse. Bruce is a court-certified expert in the manufacture of methamphetamine and has worked in various capacities for the DEA as an undercover agent, case agent, field training agent, training supervisor, and assistant special agent in charge. Dr. Abby Metcalf has an MA in counseling psychology, a PhD in organizational psychology. She's a registered addiction specialist and has been in the mental health and addiction field for 25 years, over 25 years. Abby has worked in several adolescent addiction programs and was the director of the outpatient adolescent program at Newbridge Foundation, which is a nonprofit drug and alcohol treatment facility in Berkeley. In addition to her private practice, Abby currently oversees the development of programs at Newbridge. She's a popular keynote speaker regarding parenting, couples, families, and addiction, and has presented at many companies and organizations as well as public and private schools, hospitals, and rehab centers. And one thing about Abby is, if there's research out there about any subject, she probably knows about it. And Dee Dee McFarland is a teacher turned writer, born and raised in the San Francisco Peninsula, married for 25 years with 2 children, and lives down in Los Altos. Her first career was in education with a master's degree in English as a second language. But for the past 4 years, her life has been revolved around her son's addiction. Now that her 22-year-old son is a recovering drug addict, she has turned to advocacy and education for families of addicts. Dee Dee has launched a new website, Addiction Support and Knowledge, ASK, for family recovery, a source of local information and resources for families in the Bay Area. And you can find that at askforfamilyrecovery.com. She's a board member of the Women's Recovery Association, a rehab treatment facility in San Mateo, and she's working on publishing her first book, which traces her family's battle with the disease of addiction. And finally, we have Wojtek, excuse me, our surprise speaker tonight, a colleague. A colleague of Abby at Newbridge. He's a licensed marriage and family counselor, previously worked at Thunder Road, which is the treatment program for adolescents in Oakland, and currently assistant program director at Newbridge Foundation in Berkeley with Abby. So they're going to each present a little bit of information briefly, and then we're going to open this up for questions that you have about anything related to the topic. Please welcome our panel.
So yeah, it was obvious. I'm the Fed because I'm the one with the suit and the tie on. And the only reason it makes me an expert in methamphetamine is because I lost all my hair working in these laboratories. But being on the supply side, working all over the world for DEA in the last 24 years, I've got a better perspective of the supply side of a lot of the drugs and a lot of the issues that we face here in Marin County. I am not a mental health expert, and I think our panel has a lot of experience here to cover that side of it. What I can tell you about, what we can talk about for just a little bit, because we really want to get to the questions, is what we're really seeing right here. What has really been the #1 killer for a lot of our young adults has been the prescription pills over the last couple of years. Of the 22,000 accidental overdose drug deaths in the United States last year, 16,000 of them were the result of opioid-based pain medications. Okay. So when we talk about drugs, this is a lot of the things that we're seeing now. Now also in these areas, we're seeing an increased use of heroin. Some of that is a byproduct of the crackdown and the availability of the pills issues that we've been having. Opioid-based pain pills, the logical next step, or the logical step if you cannot get a hold of these pills anymore, is heroin. You've seen it recently in the news with Philip Seymour Hoffman. We had a real tragedy here in this school last year of a recent graduate. So it's out there and it's coming back. We're seeing a lot of issues with synthetic drugs still. You may have heard the terms spice or K2 or bath salts. These are synthetic cannabinoids, fake marijuana, it may be called, or legal marijuana, you may have heard it, or synthetic cathinones, which are known as bath salts. These drugs mimic some of the effects of ecstasy or LSD. They have strong stimulant properties or hallucinogenic properties. They're very unstable and very unpredictable. So while in 2009, 2010, the number of emergency room visits from these synthetic drugs really spiked and grew exponentially, thankfully, in the last year, those numbers have dropped a little because people are starting to realize just how unpredictable those synthetic types of drugs are. You may have heard of Molly. Molly used to be a term specific to MDMA or ecstasy. Now, when you hear the term Molly, it can be one of a dozen different types of synthetic stimulants that are out there. It could be any number of a mixture of synthetic substances. Again, the side effects can be wholly unpredictable because you really don't know what the mixture or the cut is. Still huge issues with marijuana, and we can debate the whole idea of the legalization all you want. But tonight I want to focus on youth issues related to marijuana. And nobody can sit there with a straight face and tell me that that's a good idea. So we can have those questions, and I can do it all night. But let's focus on the youth here and focus on what our big concerns are with that. So we have plenty of time for questions. I'm going to turn it over to Abby.
Okay. I'm going to stand up. Hi. So a lot of what I do is talk in the communities. I'm at like Northgate High School tomorrow night in Concord about parenting, right? And how we deal with being parents in this time. And it's very different than when our parents were parents, right? Do you remember them? So I know you've become your mother and it's freaking you out, but or me out. Is that just me? Did I say that out loud? So what's happening is, there's always been drugs, obviously, right? I myself am a recovering heroin addict, and I went to Columbia. So there's no like, oh, they look that way, or they should be this way, or you can't get into a good school if you're using, or I'm working with a young man right now who just got into Stanford. This is not a class issue or a, we don't look like you issue. This is an everybody issue. And it really is. And I don't just deal with addicts, so I deal with quote unquote normal people too, right? So I see sort of, teens all on the spectrum. And I can tell you though that the way that we're thinking these days has gotten really confused. For the first time in the history of people, children have access to more information than adults. And this is a problem. So we don't think of it much because we're like the proverbial frogs in the water. If you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. If you put a frog in the water and turn it up slowly, it'll boil itself to death. This is true, right? We're boiling and don't know it. And so we're not here just to scare you. There's good stuff on the other side, and there's a lot of things you can do to guard against this happening in your home. Nothing's a guarantee, but don't think that, that's different or those parents did that. It's one of the reasons I asked Dee Dee here tonight. Because I really wanted you to see that it's any family. My parents were married 54 years. It's not, what you might think it is. And a lot of this stuff happens when kids go off to college, so there's a lot of things you can do now, right, when they're in high school and middle school, right, and up. So the conversation it almost can't start too young. We're going to talk tonight about, I have lots of questions and answers about, well, what do I do if my kid asks if I did drugs, right? What do I, all those questions you should be asking tonight, because you should have really good knowledge when you leave here, right, of what to do. But I will say that it is different. And the thing that's the most different, I think, is, and I love technology, and I have, 2 iPhones in my bag right now for both my numbers, and, I love all my little tiny gadgets and all that, and that's great. But what happens is there's a ability that kids have today for poor impulse control that we didn't have. I'll say we for anyone maybe in their 40s who's in the room and over, that we didn't have at that age. And so I have a young girl in my practice right now who tried to commit suicide, almost a valedictorian, she's second in her class, because she was in the locker room changing. Another kid took her picture and had it already posted all over social media, right, before they even left the locker room. We didn't have that ability then, right? We didn't have this, right? We were still using typewriters, remember? I went off to college with a Smith Corona. So, and the onion paper and the little pencils with the eraser on one end and the little brush on the other. Yeah, so if you don't know what that is, I don't want to talk to you. So please leave now. So this is a really rapid growth time. So yes, there's always been change, but never like now. Never at the rate. It's exponential right now. And we're behind. We're not really understanding it. And so, a 12-year-old girl comes in my office with her latte and her, right, clothing that I don't even know where she got that, and right? So I call them prostitutes, that little outfits they wear. And she's looking very grown up and talking in a way that I could not talk at that age. Like I was street smart. I grew up in New York City, pretty street smart, streetwise, and I can't talk as well as these young kids can talk sometimes. We mistake that for maturity. They do not have their frontal lobes connected. I do a whole other lecture on this if you ever want to have me back, because that'll scare the heck out of you when you hear about the brain chemistry and what happens. That's a whole other piece. Frontal lobes, not connected. They are not little adults. They are not mini versions of us. They are completely and wholly different with an inability, no hard wiring to make the kind of decisions that we make now. So even this whole debate right now, what's more dangerous, pot or alcohol, is making me insane, because no one's asking the important questions, right? Which is, that's not even a question to ask, that's ridiculous, right? What we know is that when drugs are more available, this is from the research, guess what happens? The use goes up. That's what we know. So if we make pot legal, right, now we have an issue with it being very available to our teens, to our kids. And don't even get me started on what happens to the brain chemistry. So, and for adults. And we just had great studies out of Duke showing IQ points going down when kids start in their teens and go through their 20s. I mean, we have great research on this now. Or I should say, we're getting to have great research. Remember, pot hasn't been able to be studied because of the scheduled drug it is, right? So for them to create studies on it is really hard. They can't get permission. So we're just starting all that now, too. But we have a lot of good information these days. So having said all that, but I want you to be in that headspace when we talk, that it's not, well, my parents did this, it's not that different now. It really is. It's really a time when we have to be thinking differently and parenting differently. And so we're going to hopefully help you with that tonight.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee. I am really happy to see all of you here. It shows your love and concern to be here on a busy weekday night and to talk about this. It's really important. In July 2010, I stood in my kitchen, barely able to breathe. I had just moved mountains to get my 19-year-old son, to rehab. Didn't see it coming. I was stunned how little I knew then and what more was still to come. I come from a suburb in Los Altos, down in Silicon Valley. Feels kind of like this. Up here, big high school. Kids playing sports out there. When I park the car, same thing. I have 2 kids. My son is now 22. My daughter's 20. He was my firstborn. He took AP classes. He played competitive soccer. He had a lot of good college offers. And he had a mom that was paying attention. Still, he's a heroin addict. Thankfully, he's nearly 2 years in recovery, so he's a recovering addict, but we have all been through hell. Bruce talked about heroin, and it's screaming from the headlines. Philip Seymour Hoffman's death, the governor of Vermont did his entire State of the State address in January on this topic. 35 minutes talking about drug addiction taking the state of Vermont down. Heroin addiction under the age of 21 is the fastest growing use of heroin. I am living this epidemic firsthand, and I welcome your questions. It took me a long time to be able to say my son is a heroin addict, but now that I have, and now that our family is doing the things that we can to get ourselves into recovery from this nightmare, every kid that dies out there is a javelin to my heart. This doesn't have to be. Parents have a big influence on their kids, despite the way they treat us sometimes. So I look forward to your questions. Thanks.
My name is Wojtek. Again, I thought I'd be sitting back there with some of you all. Definitely did not expect to be a panelist. Thanks, Abby. Well, what can I say? I have been working in recovery for a decade. So I spend more time with addicts than I do normies and non-users. I can't speak a lot about research, but I am a mental health specialist. I'm a licensed therapist. And when we get to question and answers, I can speak about how addiction and mental health relate. I'm Polish, so I grew up with alcoholics. I have alcoholism in my family. So it is something that on a personal level, I am vigilant of. Yeah, I'm open to questions. I'm open to questions.
Great. So we're going to try to use the microphone. We're videotaping so we can place this up on the website so people who couldn't come tonight would be able to have the benefit of hearing from people.
This is for, I forgot your name, the DEA agent.
I've been told a lot worse. It's Bruce.
Bruce, these synthetic drugs you're talking about, the bath salts, things like that, how are those administered? Are they crushing them and snorting them? Are they smoking them?
Well, there's a number of ways. Basically, the synthetic chemical that we're seeing is coming to the United States in a liquid form from China right now, mostly from China. And for the synthetic cannabinoids, the false marijuana or the legal marijuana, what they're doing is taking any type of organic material and they're spraying this chemical on it and letting it dry, and then packaging these small 5 milligram packages and selling them in head shops, tobacco shops. You can buy them over the internet. So those are smoked for the most part. The bath salts, the synthetic cathinones, can be heated and you can inhale the vapors, you can ingest it, you can snort it. So there are a number of delivery systems for it. It runs the gamut depending on what form the trafficker puts it in.
Now, the second part of my question is drug tests that you can get at Walgreens or wherever. Would they pick up on the synthetic drugs? They tell you basically what's going on?
It really depends on the main chemical ingredient. The issue with these synthetic cathinones and cannabinoids are almost all of these compounds were created for medical research years and years and years ago. They're published and they're now available on the internet. So you're getting these rogue chemists who are taking this known substance and they are altering the substance slightly to change its genetic makeup. And when they do that, and it is not a known compound to the US, it's not technically illegal because we can't identify it. And so a lot of these things are completely mixed and we have to go through a whole process to identify them so we can place them in schedule and make them illegal. So some of the substances will show up on certain drug tests and some will not. We identify new substances each month because the rogue chemists are always trying to stay one step ahead of the law. So it's tough to do that. But some of the side effects in generality of things to look for, I can give you that. But again, it may hit on some of the basic drug tests and some it may not.
And lastly, here's the last one. The Oxycontin and the opiates that you're saying lead to heroin use because I guess it's cheaper to get the heroin and harder to get the other drugs. I don't know how they make that leap. Are they snorting the heroin, or are they just going straight to a needle? Because I know psychologically that's
that's part of
call.
the things when you think of the stereotypes of heroin users. You think of junkies in the street. You think of them using needles, and it doesn't have to be that way anymore. It can be concentrated enough in a powder form that you can snort it. Or we actually just a couple of months ago in one of the cities on the East Coast found the heroin in pill form because they are marketing it to those who are now been priced out of the pill market. So it's not just the needle anymore. I know that you get that stereotype of heroin in your mind of the person there with the needle, and it doesn't have to be that way anymore. So,
thank you.
Bruce, I'd like to know more about Molly. My son in college tells me that it's very prevalent and claims it's pure MDMA versus ecstasy. What can I tell him to scare the hell out of him, other than what I've said?
So originally,
Nothing's pure.
Molly was a term used to describe pure MDMA because it came in a powder form, not a pill. When you turn something into a pill, you have to have some kind of binder that keeps it in that pill form. And that is considered an impurity in the drug. So just because it's in a powdered form doesn't mean it's pure. If traffickers are trying to get the most money out of their sales, and they are, because it's a business for them, they will mix all kinds of things into their substance to create more weight. So just because it's in a powdered form doesn't mean it's pure. And it's not just going to be MDMA anymore. It can be MDA, it could be methadone, it could be CP3. There's a whole host of other substances that will mimic the same effects of ecstasy, MDMA. So we buy these samples all the time undercover or through informants, and we get them tested regularly, and we find a whole host of different substances, sometimes completely different. But to the average user, if the effects are similar, they'll never know the difference.
And that's how the deaths are happening.
Do the kids know this information that you're giving us?
Well, we don't just speak to the parents.
Okay.
You know, I do a couple of different classes and things all over the place, and I know that Abby and Wojciech probably speak to a lot of students. So we're doing everything you can, whether that's through the TAM Drug and Alcohol Task Force or now the newly formed coalition, to try to educate the kids and to dispel some of the myths that they only learn from other students. And sometimes those other students, who may be their friend, really aren't their friend. And I'll give you some website ideas that you can look at where some of these kids are looking also, getting their information.
What do you do if you know of a parent that is supplying alcohol at a student party at their home? Abby, Wojtek, Dee?
You want, from a law enforcement perspective, okay,
We can start there.
you have your social host ordinance laws here in the county. Technically, the parents can be charged. The first fine is $750, I understand, in this county, where they're serving alcohol to minors. God forbid a youth leaves that party and has an accident. That's a completely different story. But there are social host ordinances. As far as how you direct or explain to parents what they should do with other parents and how they should inform that, I'll pass that one off.
But the legality between having it under your roof and not knowing that other kids are bringing it into your house versus actually serving it is huge. However, the fines are probably the same.
It's still, if
That's
it's your
the
house,
liability of having a party.
if
It's
it's
like-
your house and there are kids that are drinking in your house, you're the adult, you're the owner of that, it doesn't matter if you don't know.
That's exactly-
Doesn't matter if you don't
That's
know.
my point.
Yeah, if it's your house and that's happening in your house, you're responsible. We've heard story after stories of parents that go out of town, their kids have parties. It doesn't change the fact. You know, knowledge of the parents is not necessary to enforce the social host ordinance.
What if your kids are supposed to be with the other parent in a different house? You know, like, you've gone out of town, and you're not giving them permission to be in the house. They're supposed to be with your other parent. You know, it's a two-household family, very common. And all of a sudden, the kids here and have a party.
You're stuck with it. It's your house. It's your, if,
The other parent has no liability for the fact that the children are in their care and responsible. You still,
you know, it really comes down to who's paying the rent for that property or who's paying the mortgage on that property. Legally, it's their property.
One of the things that is really frustrating is that one thing that's really frustrating is that you'll hear, oh, this named boy is selling ecstasy in the boys' bathroom at the middle school, and I have heard from my own children that there's a drug dealer in our neighborhood, but of course they don't want me to do anything about it. And I'm just wondering can a parent make a report to a law enforcement person without it getting turned back, you know, on their kids, especially when you have reason to believe with the dealer in our neighborhood that probably, you know, they've got guns or whatever. I mean, his quote legal thing is making medicinal marijuana, but you know, now I know that he was like selling marijuana to all these kids in middle school.
and harder drugs too.
There's no requirement to have your name known. There's several ways and a few different hotlines to anonymously report your information. We do that all the time. I have a number of people that are professional sources that we pay for information, and the only way we keep them confidential and so they can continue doing what they're doing is we keep them anonymous. It's common practice in law enforcement to protect your sources as best you can. And depending on how much their involvement is, how much you can protect them from testifying. But if you're a concerned neighbor, there are a number of ways to protect your anonymity.
Okay, because I've just heard that this information about the guy selling drugs at MVMS, it's been reported to the school, but nothing's happened. And so I'm just thinking maybe it's a good idea to let everybody know you should go to law enforcement, because I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why the school can't act, maybe. But, you know, I would get louder, number one. But I want to go back just this whole thing. If your kids tell you that somebody's doing drugs or selling drugs, the reason they're telling you is because they want you to do something. They feel out of control. You are not your kids, not that this is towards you, but you're not their best friend, you're not their confidant, you are not any of that. And I'll even guarantee you, I'll give you your money back for tonight. Because I've been speaking, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I will tell you that every parent says, oh, they'll never tell me a secret again, they'll never confide in me again. No, they won't. They won't confide in you again if you don't do anything. They can keep a secret. They keep secrets all the damn time. They don't tell you half the stuff they do, trust me. If they tell you, they feel scared, they don't know what's happening, they want an adult to know. Make sure you do something, whatever level that is. And that's not directed at you, that's a bigger thing, but whatever level that is, do something. Do not be tricked or seduced, and they'll say, I'm gonna tell you something, but you can't tell anybody, you know, they do that. And you let them know right then. I do it with my own kid. Don't tell, no, then don't tell me. Never mind, I might tell somebody, so don't do that. Walk away, they'll chase you. They will chase you. They will come back tomorrow, they'll come back tonight. I guarantee you can call me in the middle of the night if it doesn't happen. It will happen, I promise. They want you to know they have no trouble keeping secrets. None at all, you know they do, right? That's the stuff you really want to know, by the way, but anyway.
Okay, so I'm going to do something about it. My daughter's telling me that she's going into the bathroom in TAM, and it's smelling, reeking of weed, and she has to leave. So what is she supposed to do?
Come and tell me.
Well, I'm telling you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, where she's like, I don't know what to do. So I told her I'm coming here. Yeah.
You know, along those lines, just so you know, most of the studies and the percentages show that maybe 18 to 20% of children have tried a controlled substance. So if your kid's perspective is everybody's doing it, it's not. It's not. It's not even close.
Well, my question is really for Tam, so it's really to know what the size of the problem is here, because you hear lots of rumors. And also, what the school policy is with drugs, because I don't know.
Am I loud enough? Is that all right? Obviously, we do not want drugs and alcohol on campus. And so what we do, if we have somebody report to us, we can go look, we have video cameras. We'll go through, we'll see what we can find. Teachers often report to us if they're concerned of a student using. We have lots of conversations. Again, we'll bring a student in if we suspect that they might be under the influence or if they have something in their backpack and they're searched. In the past, we've called the police, for certain needs. What we've kind of looked at right now, we've changed our discipline policy. We were sending kids home for 3 days, and then that didn't really make a lot of sense to us because you're at home now, and great, you have more time to sit around and do stupid things. I'm not saying that every kid does stupid things, but so at this point we've changed our discipline policy and the kids get to come back and hang out with us all day. That is not fun. We take away your cell phone, we take away your access to computers. You get to sit next to my office and chit chat and do your homework, and haven't had a lot of repeat offenders right now. So in that respect, we're being very proactive, trying again to get the message out. This is not acceptable on TAM's campus, and trying to work with the families as best as we can. Again, we are trying to look at creating a Friday Night Live program, lots of options, but again, we don't want this on our campus, and we want our kids to be safe.
What are you doing off campus, across the street, say, in the parking lot where the clouds go over there?
Every afternoon.
It's ridiculous. You walk over there and smell it everywhere. Sorry about that. They walk across the street to get high, and there's nobody there.
And unfortunately, I've had some friends come back and see me after lunch, so we know that. My campus supervisors, ourselves, we're walking around and we're bringing some kids back and having those tough discussions.
I mean, if it's legal, and it's on the campus,
We've used the police in the past and have been working with the Mill Valley Police Department. Students have been cited, things to that extent. We're going back and forth with that if that's the best absolute way to deal with this. We've done that in the past and we're still kind of considering our options.
The Mill Valley Police Department does have a school resource officer. Covers all the schools in the Mill Valley, City of Mill Valley. So there is a school resource officer. He works with the campus along with the other campuses. You know, to a certain extent, when they walk off campus and they leave this campus, it's out of Principal Sinyard's purview until they come back on campus. So you need to keep that in mind. I mean, it's an open campus. Kids can come and go from the campus for lunch or after school or before school.
hang out over there during lunch. Cover all bases. The lobes aren't attached.
Well, what do you think?
Yeah.
This is much return, I gotta tell you. Have your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a woman from the County Health and Human Services that is the expert on this e-cigarette issue right now. I heard her present last month. She'll be at the event for the Marin County Board of Education's event on April 26th. That's a Sunday. They'll be there from 9 to 2, doing a number of different activities. That's also DEA's National Take Back Day. So I'll be there as well, picking up your unwanted prescriptions, because 54% of young adults are getting their prescription drug medicine from their own home. They're stealing it from your medicine cabinet, their friend's medicine cabinet, or their grandparents' medicine cabinet. And that's how they're getting them, more than half of them. That's the easiest way they're getting their pills. So but back to the e-cigarette thing, yeah, you can exchange that tobacco cartridge with anything. And there's been a number of, I know in Nevada, they've confiscated a number of these e-cigarettes with cartridges that do not contain tobacco anymore, that contained hash oil, which is a very concentrated form of THC. So yeah, it's out there.
So as parents, what do we look for? Like, especially Dee Dee, you said straight A student, soccer. What did you finally find out, and how do we keep our eyes open?
Well, when she mentioned the e-cigarette, I thought all you need is a Bic pen and some foil and a lighter, and you can melt a pill of Oxycontin that will roll down the foil, and they'll smoke that. So, and for my son, it was the prescription drug, Oxycontin, which, you know, on the street, it used to be $80 a pill. Heroin, a bag is $10. So that straightforward economics to get to somebody's question about, you know, why would you go from prescription drugs like Oxy or Vicodin to heroin, and it's as simple as that. So, I mean, there's the physical characteristics, irritability, they're keeping secrets, stuff doesn't add up. Their eyes just don't look right. My son's skin started to turn green when it got really bad. Lack of sleep, he lost a lot of weight, continual cough. You probably, all the obvious things like Visine or air fresheners, all those things. Friends, you know.
All their friends and all the parents. You want to know who they're with. If they change friends, it's a really big deal, right? You want to know who those friends are. Be the house where the kids come. Be the house where the kids come. Don't always have your kids out. Have them home. Say, oh, I'd like to meet so-and-so. Bring them up. Well, I don't think, then you don't be with so-and-so. Unless I know so-and-so's parents and I know their phone number and I call them, you can't go to that house. I mean, that's what we do. We have this idea for sure, when our kids are little, we're all over them, right? We're all over everything they do. And as they get older, of course, we start to back off, right? That's the natural thing. It's what we're supposed to do, right? They got to fly from the nest soon. That is true to a degree, it really is. But there's another level where we actually have to be more vigilant. We actually have to do more work. And I know it feels like, well, they're going to college next year. I should be really, yeah, that's true. And still know these pieces because that's why we're seeing a lot of overdoses in college, right? So these kids are getting away for the first time and they're really kind of losing it. And we do see things like heroin overdoses. That's what happened with Philip Seymour Hoffman, happened with Corey Monteith, because they hadn't done the drugs in a while. So when you haven't done it in a while, you take too much because you're taking what you used to take and then you overdose, right? So that's kind of commonly how that happens. But having said that, I often tell parents, really give kids some rope in high school. Like, again, senior year more, not freshman year, but senior year more. Let them have a little more rope because they're coming home to a safe place. This is the perfect time to be checking this stuff, right? To be seeing what's going on and what they can and can't do. But with that rope, you don't really want them to hang themselves, so let's know who the parent, have that in place too. But if they're going to have those stumbles, you want them to have them as much as possible, right? Then, more of those. They're still going to have, obviously, a different life when they go away, if they go away. But you want them to have more then. And I do want to speak just quickly to the urine screens that we raised before. I don't like the urine screens personally. This is a personal soapbox because I beat every urine screen that was ever given to me. I can get you something. I can walk out this door and I don't even know the area and probably within a half hour buy something that can beat a urine screen. That's not hard. So if you're using those, that's why I was always golden. That would say, yeah, test me, sure, because I knew I could just beat it. So that's the problem with those. Your kids. You know how the hair on the back of your neck goes up. You know how you're looking. This is what Dee Dee was saying. Something's different. Something's off. What's hard is that teenagers act crazy anyway, right? That's their job, right? So it's like, what am I seeing? And that's sort of what's hard. So don't look at one thing, right? If they had glassy eyes one day, all right, note that, that's kind of weird, just have it in your head. Just don't dismiss them all. What happens later is I meet with parents and they'll go, oh yeah, there was the glassy eyes a couple months ago. They changed friends a couple months after that. It's one thing here and they did something about it and went away. One thing here did something, right? And they're not putting it together as like a theme. So one thing it's just one thing, right? But a bunch of things, and again, your parent instinct is there's nothing better. And that's what you use. You don't ask them if they're doing drugs. You say, when was the last time? Right? When? So when did you smoke pot? I smell pot. When did you smoke it? Not did you. You know they did. You're smelling it. Of course they're going to say, no, I didn't do it. And if you say when, just so you know, you'll get an answer. They'll stop too. Because don't ask. Say. Just say it. What worst thing is wrong. Ooh, you accuse them when they didn't do it. Trust me, you're probably right. So, trust yourself.
I want to add something, especially for middle school parents that I saw a number of hands go up. One of the things that I got a chance to do things over because I had a younger daughter, and one thing that really worked is I got good at asking the what if questions, and that did two things. When I asked her a scenario starting with what if, it got her thinking about what would she do in that situation and what would she say, and she's not good at looking ahead like I imagine some of your kids show that. So it got her thinking about it, and it also, more important thing was, it let me know of her thought process. It let me know if she was totally, stunned by that question. If I said, so what would you do if you're at a party and somebody offered you cocaine? When I did ask her that when she was a junior, she was like, oh, Mom, that's already happened last year, and this is what I did, and blah, 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 blah. And so I was impressed. My worry quotient went way down because I thought, you know what? She's already handled this. She's thought about what to do, and made me more confident in allowing her to go to a party. So what if question is a really good thing to get insight into your kid's head.
I will say one thing, there is a culture of secrecy. Your kids are talking about drugs and alcohol on a regular basis. They are. You probably know this. If you don't, you know it now. They're talking about it. It's part of the culture, it's part of society, they're talking about it. But there's also this, this distance with authority. So the whole concept of don't be a snitch, don't be a rat. There is a lot of secrecy and shame that comes with this. You want to create some kind of space where it is an open topic for discussion, because they will be talking about it with someone. You want to create a space where that environment can be at home. One of the things that I have seen, if you allow me, Didi, which was really successful with your son, is that he came into an adult facility as a young adult. So I worked with teenagers for 5.5 years, now I'm working with adults. But a lot of adults that I work with now seem like teenagers to me, right? They're like 30 going on 15. And what's happened within the last 2.5, 3 years is there's been this culture at Newbridge of the young adults that have found this kinship and this community with each other, because they have found a sense of community there. So for a lot of teenagers, whether in recovery or trying to figure out how they feel about addiction or drug use, there's not a lot of space to feel okay talking about it, because the culture has been, you either do it or you don't talk about it. We have, I would say, about 25 18 to 24-year-olds that are now consistently showing up to our facility, and now we have a spreader culture of new young clients coming into our program, which otherwise didn't even see that there was an option. That there's young people's meetings out there. There's 12-step meetings for young adults, because it's such a niche for that population. Like Abby said, it's the age where developmentally you're trying to figure out what is appropriate antisocial behavior. So it's not to pathologize, any erratic behavior, but it's all about finding a sense of belonging for them, so they can feel like there's something bigger there, because there's so much secrecy. I have the advantage of working in a facility where it's an enclosed environment, and we can work with them 24 hours a day. But even doing that day in, day out, one of the hardest things is for them to break through that don't snitch, don't tell. They're in a safe facility where there are no repercussions for them to talk, except for maybe what they've already conditioned themselves to believe. And it's still the hardest thing to work through. So I understand the challenges that a lot of you, it's my assumption that a lot of you have with your kids, is to help them jump over that hump. But whatever you can do to create that, I would say would be really important.
Hi. So I come from an alcoholic home, and I have years in 12-step program myself, and my worst fear is, my son becoming an addict. And so my husband and I have been having some lively discussions about how to broach our family histories and what that means for our son, because to tell him it in a certain way, I don't want to lay a trip on him and make him think and have it become a fait accompli. On the other hand, I think he needs to know that there's increased risk. So that's one part of the question. And then the other part is, and then what about when they say, well, what did you do when you were a teenager?
Oh yeah. So I've got a great story, don't I? Homeless heroin addict on the streets of New York. Oh my gosh. Shouldn't I be the greatest thing to tell my children about? No. So if your kid asks, did you do drugs at my age? Right? So did you do drugs when you were my age? Did you smoke pot? Did you drink? Your answer is not yes or no. Your answer is a question. If they're asking you, did you do drugs at my age, what are they really asking you? Can I do drugs at my age? And if they're asking that, it's because they saw something that day, they've been talking to their friends about it, it's been at the parties they were at, they want permission to do it. They want to see how bad it's going to be. So you want to ask a question back, right? So, that's an interesting question, right? So tell me, what happened that you're asking that question? Well, nothing, nothing. I just was curious. You give me an honest answer, I'll think about giving you one. They're lying. Or say it, you're lying. That's not true. Something's happening. Tell me, I want to know. No, nothing's happening. Okay. That's the end of that conversation for now. Come back to it, right? You can come back to it. And we're talking about that in a minute because it's two separate things. But they're asking for permission. Now, if I get this lovely story about how I was a drug addict and oh my gosh, and it was terrible and all this stuff, my kids are going to think one of two things. So they either go one way, which is, right, well, she turned out okay. She went to Columbia. She's got a PhD. She's right. I turned out great. I'm fabulous, right? No. Tattoos were later. No. Or I'm nothing like her, right? It's going to go on. It's not about, I hate to say this, but they don't care. I know it hurts, doesn't it? They don't care what you did. They only care about themselves. Did you not notice? Do you not have a child? It's all about them. They're really just hoping you'll talk and so they can go do whatever they want. It's smoke and mirrors. It's like, so, but what happens is we get so seduced, don't we? It's like, oh, let me tell you, oh yeah, don't, And I admit, I sit up here with all this great stuff, just know I make every mistake there is. Of course I do, right? Because, I'm this second, right? But on the other side, talking about history is great. So the number one prophylactic measure, everybody has it, NIDA, SAMHSA, every piece of research shows that the number one deterrent to your kids doing drugs is your relationship with them, your conversations with them. Is that amazing? Parents have more power than you think. The number one reason why kids say they don't do drugs or haven't tried it is because they don't want to disappoint their parents. Number one reason why. Okay, number one, in every study. So really what you do want to say, right, and I want to say to my kids is, yes, right, when we have the drug talk, 'cause you do want to have that. You want to talk about that. Hey, we have a zero policy in this house around drugs and alcohol. Or obviously it starts younger, you're not even talking that yet, right? Your kids are hearing a song, or they're little, right? And you start to have that conversation. But maybe you're past that and you've missed that window. It doesn't matter. But you have the conversation, you tell them, and you can say, hey, there's a history of drugs and alcohol in the family, and I need to tell you about this. You don't have to talk, I don't have to say I was a homeless heroin addict. I don't do any of that. I just say there's a long history of drugs and alcohol in our family. There's a gene. Let me see that beautiful hair you have, right, that I used to have? That's from me, right? So you have that, you're tall like us, you're whatever, right? You have all this stuff that we gave you, and we gave you this. You have this gene. So other kids could try alcohol and it might be okay. If you do it, here's what can happen, right? And here's what is likely to happen, right? So that's the thing. Talk about statistics. You can do that. Here's the real big one. We know, and there's research, there's study after study after study, that the longer it is till the first drink or drug, the better your chances of your child not becoming addicted. That is number one. So your number one job is to hold it off as long as possible. Not to, well, have them try it at home so it's a safe environment. They're going to do it anyway. I hear this all the time. I want to run naked screaming through the woods. It's so, well, I really don't, sorry. It's really wrong. I say that with all the love in my heart as a parent who does lots of mistakes. It's not an okay assumption. It's also not okay. People say, well, culturally, right? Well, I'm from France, I'm from Spain, I'm from here, I'm from there. First of all, this is American culture. We are what we are right here, right? And I'm not saying that you couldn't be the 100th, % different person, but why would you chance it? For what? I don't understand what the payoff is on the other side, right? So let's not chance it on that. And we also know now that the things we thought were true, like that France had a really low alcoholism rate because they allowed their kids to drink young, is wrong. They have a really high alcoholism rate. So the things we thought were true aren't even true. So, kind of throw away that as much as you can. And I'm not saying you can't, drink responsibly in your home. That is something that you can, show kids, right, that you can drink responsibly. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but, think if you have a party at your house and there's always alcohol. What is the message to your kid? That to have fun, you have to have alcohol, so make sure there's a barbecue without alcohol too sometimes. So if you're really going to show responsible drinking, you're going to show both, not just the one. Right? So just think of it, that's all. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, alcohol is evil. I'm not saying that or whatever, but be thoughtful and keep that first drink or drug away as long as possible.
I just want to share one incident that happened with my stepdaughter. She's 15 now, she's a freshman at Redwood, but she was at Hall right toward the end of 7th grade. I got a call in the city I was working, and they couldn't get a hold of her mom or her papa. Said, we've had an incident with your daughter. She was caught using marijuana. Shocked the heck out of me. She was a straight A student. I made my way over there. By the time I got there, her mother was there in the principal's office with 2 police officers. They had read her Miranda rights, and only to find out she was trying to get into a group of other kids that smoked pot. And she bought a $10 bag of marijuana. And thank God she was so ignorant, she ate it. She didn't know she was supposed to smoke it. I thought, who does that? But regardless, she had to go through the system. She ended up going to counseling. She had to go to these jury things where she would actually judge other kids. Yeah, and it had a really profound effect on her. And I tell myself now that probably is the best thing that could have happened to her, to catch her at that age, and just to realize what a dumb, stupid mistake that was, and how stupid it was to try and eat it, first of all. But you know, the system, I think, works if you catch them at the right time. I just thought I'd share that.
Oh my God. That was all mine.
Yeah, it was my fault. Can't get too close to it.
I just, my daughter says, I know I'm too young to be doing drugs, but I'm really interested in marijuana. I hear it makes you really feel great and really mellow and really relaxed, and all she hears are great things about it. And she says, but I know I'm too young right now, but I do plan on trying it. You know, I do plan on when I'm old enough. And I'm like, well, when is old enough? And she doesn't really give me an answer, but I'm just wondering, like, what do I say to that?
I'll just. My son, in the 5 rehabs that it took for my son to find recovery, I was at many family week programs, and those are educational. A whole week you're there and you hear a lot of information, but you're also hearing some of the stories of those people. And I remember one boy said, he was in his early 20s, and he was speaking about his time in high school, and he said, you know, we all thought that it wasn't addictive. You know, that's what all my friends thought. Weed is not addictive, he said. And he said, but now that I'm in early recovery, I have to live with the guilt that I was the one who turned my younger brother on to smoking weed, and he's homeless living on the streets. Conversations, communication, as Abby said, you know, maybe that's your daughter bringing that up. It's a great place to start, with facts, not erroneous websites that Bruce was alluding to, that they get their information. Start talking to them about it, the risks. If there's, you know, family history, they've got a genetic vulnerability, she starts smoking that, and, you know, maybe she needs to meet and hear some of those stories firsthand.
And also the consequences.
And, well, there's a pamphlet back there on the myths of marijuana. I'll give you a website that you can also go and look to that give you some nice straight talking facts, and your kids can look at it. But I will tell you that everybody I have come in contact with in my 25 years of being on the law enforcement side, there are many people I have met that have used marijuana that have not graduated to heroin and cocaine and methamphetamine. But every single person that I've come in contact with, whether I put them in handcuffs or we found them dead because they were using heroin, cocaine, or methamphetamine, started with marijuana. It's that simple.
It's the same, you know, first of all, they're illegal. That's the first thing you say. And I would take a very firm stance, like, well, that's really good information, and we have a zero tolerance policy in this house, and that will absolutely not be tolerated. My job is to keep you safe, and that is completely unsafe. If she said, I'm going to run down the road with a gun, a loaded gun, right, you'd have a reaction. I'm going to go have some sex, and just letting you know, it feels good. I hear it feels good, and I'm not going to use a condom, because I hear that gets in the way, right? You'd be all over that. But for some reason, the pod, because it's our own stuff, you know, it's not that bad, it's not a big deal. You know, if crack dealers move into your street, right, or meth dealers, you're freaking out. If pot dealers move in, actually, you're learning to freak out. We're learning, hey, this is really dangerous. There's a lot of money involved, so there's guns and there's things involved. But we tend to like, pot, you know, it's like the 60s groovy cool thing. It's toxic, you know, and I can go on with the things that we know now about how it affects especially teens. So remember, frontal lobes not connected. Pot sits in the interstitial tissue in the brain, which we have more of in teenagers, right? So again, lobes, the things that give you values and judgment, that's that part of your brain, which isn't developed fully till your mid-20s, right? Mid-20s, at the very least, they should wait till there. We know that it sits in that, like a black tar, in between, so the synapses. So impulses can't jump. I had a kid who was a top-ranked tennis player, top-ranked, like you'd know his name if you follow kids tennis, and he was accepted to Stanford, big deal, very wealthy family, Black Hawk, and he was like, he got caught stealing pot, and he smokes it. He's like, I get straight A's, I'm going to Stanford, I'm a top-ranked tennis player, you can't tell me anything. And I made him a deal. I said, give me 3 months. Give me 3 months with no pot. Let's see, right? And needless to say, he came on the road with me forever. This kid was like my poster boy. But what happened, he had never broken in tennis above the top 10. He became number 2 within 4 months. Okay, so again, you can do well, but then do really, right? You can really, because it affects your muscle coordination, right? It affects, we know about 32 neurotransmitters, right? I mean, it goes on and on. Nothing affects more neurotransmitters than alcohol, by the way. And alcohol, of course, is the most lethal of drugs, and alcohol is the only drug you can die of withdrawal symptoms from. However, right, you know, and benzos, which act like alcohol. But pot is really, to me, the second most dangerous because it is so insidious in its ability to addict people. You also, of course, get amotivational syndrome, which comes from smoking pot, where you're not motivated to do anything because of where it's sitting in the brain. So now I'm dampening my motivation. And if you notice that it's kind of difficult to motivate teenagers, have you not noticed that? Is it just mine? It's a little difficult to motivate them, isn't it? So can you imagine now having something worse? So I would take a very hard stance to say, I'm really glad you told me that, and I got to let you know, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen because this is my job. But let me tell you about pot first. Let's give you better information, right, than you've had, and go from there.
This is great. It's really what I came to hear about. I thought I had done a pretty good job. I have a 17-year-old who's a junior, and I had scared him about the effects of marijuana. And 2 months ago, he started asking a whole lot more questions. And so I understand that he's crossed some threshold. There's people he knows he's spending time with. They're doing it. And I have not understood enough of what to say. So I appreciate what you're saying right now. I want to hear more. I mean, I knew actually some of the biomedical, biochemical stuff.
You know what he'll love? His your testes shrink. You can get yeah. You can have male. Why am I forgetting the term? Boobs. Thank you. Why am I? I'm like right on my head. Because I'm getting older. Isn't it sad? I used to be really smart. I swear. Everything stayed in there. Now it's all flying right. I'm like Teflon now. Just flies right out. We actually know at this point that this is really interesting. So if I drink, right, if I'm pregnant and I have a drink, right, my baby could get fetal alcohol syndrome. If my partner drinks, if the sperm donor drinks, right, and I don't, nothing's going to happen to my baby, right? If I don't smoke pot, but my partner smokes pot, the sperm donor, whatever, smokes pot, the baby daddy, right? Pot can actually, we have about 4 studies now that show that pot passes chromosomal walls. Only drug to do it. Is that amazing? So actually can change the intelligence level of my fetus and the developing baby. And we know, again, these Duke studies that people who smoke pot now, getting into from teenage years up, we're losing an average of 8 IQ points. This is pretty big, guys, right? So we're having, and it doesn't come back when you stop. It's gone, right? So we know that we're having trouble with, again, like motivation. We know that memory is affected. We know these things now. So pot is not this groovy tuvy, like, woo, you know, aren't we cool 60s drug. It's a really lethal thing.
You have a question back there?
So back to heroin, you said that you can snort it. Does it look like cocaine? Are kids mistakenly using it instead of cocaine? How do we know what it looks like?
Well, it can be pure white, just like cocaine. That's some of the issues with some of the heroin overdoses because they're mixed with, or they actually are, fentanyl, not heroin. And they can look exactly the same. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin is. But it can be white. On the West Coast, 95% of the heroin we see here on the West Coast or west of the Mississippi is Mexican origin heroin. So it is darker colored. It can be a brown powder. A lot of stuff we see here is the tar heroin. It looks like a sticky black substance that you can easily melt down and inject. So while it can be white, it's very rare that we see that here in California.
Is it cheaper?
Mexican heroin is very cheap.
No, then cocaine. Is it cheaper than cocaine?
It didn't used to be, but now that the purity levels are down, it is. The price of cocaine has gone up a lot because of some significant issues that we've been able to deal some blows in South America, which is the principal origin for cocaine. But it's fallen out of favor a little bit because of the huge influx into opioid-based pain pills that we've seen a resurgence in heroin. All the other drugs have either flatlined or gone down, but heroin's gone up.
Getting back to, you were saying first turn the question back on them if they're asking you what you've done, and then you can bring up family history. But they're still, but what did you try? When did you?
Yeah. So
Do you ever say?
So if your kid said to you, "Hey, when did you first have sex? Do you and Daddy have sex right now? How much money do you make? How much money do we have in the house? How much money? Right? They ask these questions. They're so cheeky. It's unbelievable. I can't imagine having asked my little Polish immigrant parents these questions. I would have been like smacked into I don't know where. But they do. There's like this entitlement about this information, right? And we did some of this, I'm afraid, right? We did it. We have told them how friggin' special they are and fabulous and different and wonderful all these years. And now they believe it, right? And some of it is teenage entitled stuff they're supposed to do. They're little narcissists, right? But when they ask, it's none of their business. It is none of their business, your personal life, like your sex life, your whatever. There's no research to show that it is helpful to talk to your kids about your drug use. Because trust me, I'd be on top of that parade, man. I got some good stories. But there's nothing to show it is.
In a situation where my daughter and I are extremely close,
great,
very open, she's going to know by me not answering that I've got a story to tell, something.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I would just say it's none of your business. It's not something I want to talk to you about. Wouldn't it be the same if, again, she asked you a lot of sex questions? Would you really get into, like, well, I had my first at this age? Or like, would you? I don't think so. You seem very groovy, but not that groovy. I mean, right? Like, how much detail? I would just say I'm really not comfortable giving you details about that. When you're in your 20s and your brain is all developed, we will have those conversations when you're an adult. But right now, you are young. You don't even know how to take in this information. So I need to wait until you're old enough to really handle that. But yeah, I can't wait to talk to you about lots of stuff.
Can I say something about that? I have two kids that are Tam High graduates in their 20s, and I have one still here. I'm a pediatrician across the street. I used to help host parent education for years, so I've listened like a lot of years. And I did find an expert speaker who I loved because he said, it's okay to lie. It is. So that's my take, and it was, a big expert that we have this always in middle school. I was waiting for that speaker to say that. And so, my own personal feeling is that worked with my kids, and I have to say all three of my kids are so incredibly different that sometimes you have to tailor some of these approaches and rules to what fits for your kids and what works best. So I had to rely on one of my kids who wanted how it worked, and and if you can delay a lot of their use and issues, and I know one person had a young person who was willing to open that dialogue. I would jump on that and open that dialogue because when they're young, they're much more open. When you start closing about 14 on average, when they're 16 and they're getting their driver's license, their friends getting their driver's license, it's really hard to communicate. And if you all of a sudden at 14 or 15 or even 13 sometimes try to open that dialogue and get into it, they're like, whoa, you are so weird, I'm not talking to you. And if you open it kind of early, it's really helpful.
Yeah. Also remember not to have the one big talk. It's like the big sex talk or something, the big, drug talk. You want to have it, you're driving the car. That's the best time. You're driving, no one's looking at each other. They love this. And do you ever notice the questions they ask when you're driving? It's the best. It's like, I want to keep driving. I'm like, I think we're going to start going to school in San Francisco because I want to have this drive a little longer, right? And those are the greatest times to use. You just start the conversation. Hey, I remember the other, and you can do something and then go back and go, hey,
you know, remember a couple weeks ago you were talking about pot and how good it felt? You know what? I went to this thing after that, and I got some information and blah, blah, blah. Just as you're driving, aren't you cool? Looking out the window. I don't even care that I'm giving you this information. It's like a little fawn in the woods. You know, they're coming up and you don't want to startle them. It's like a little like that. And then you have it again another day, you know, and you sort of build on this relationship with them. That's what you want. You don't want the big, like, we're going to sit and talk about drugs now. You don't want that.
Right. No, I agree with that. I just have a question about, I totally agree with the fact that when you talk to your kids about drinking, not, you know, we don't approve of that in our house. When you're 21, that's when you can drink. How do you broach the subject of if they are out with their friends and they get into a situation where there's nobody there that can drive them home, and you want to let them know that don't ever get in the car with anybody, or you know, and you know, let's face it, that at some point there's a chance that they may be drinking as they're, you know, older. And how do you keep them safe without making it like, well, this, you know, saying it's not okay, but then saying if you ever get yourself in this situation, call us. And
it's a both and.
Yeah, you got to leave it. I mean, believe me, I scare the crap out of my kids because of what I do. They see me leaving the house and all my tactical gear sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning. It freaks them out. Freaks them out. But I've told my daughter, who is going to be 17 this summer, so she's a junior right here, and we've had these conversations because she has some friends, she likes them, but she gets uncomfortable because she knows they've tried marijuana, and she struggles with it. And I struggle with the idea of, do I go grab that child and pound his head in, or do I go over and knock on his parents' door, and if they don't open the door, I kick it in and have a conversation with him? I struggle with this. I really do, because this is my baby.
Right.
This is my girl, and I don't want to see anything happen to her. But I've told her, I said, look, Ellie, if you're in an uncomfortable position and you need me to come pick you up at any time of the day or night, no questions asked, I will come get you. Because at the end of the day, I just want you to stay alive and be safe. So if you ever, and we've gone over this a number of times, you can call me and I will come pick you up.
And do you have like a code or something like that where you like say
know,
such and such, so if your friends are there,
they text more than they speak on the phone.
That's
Now my wife
true.
drives me crazy because I'm in the car. I'm like, I can't read the text.
Right.
But she'll just send me a text. Please come get me.
Yeah.
And I know where she's at because I've asked her to tell me where she's at.
Right.
When she goes out.
Okay.
So it's a huge thing. I worked in South America for 7 years, and it was all about knowing where my people were. I knew when they left the house, where they're supposed to be, when they got there, when they went out on operation, when they were supposed to come home. Constant communication. So I always know where they were. And I try to apply that with my children. Hey, just let me know where you're going and when you're supposed to be there. And when you start to leave to come home, let me know you're on your way home. So I know if you didn't get here, I know the last place to look. And just come up with a plan early, a sensible plan where you're just saying it's for your safety. And you get that groundwork laid, and it'll move forward from there.
I would just say ditto to that. And my daughter did call me twice, and our policy was no questions asked. So the next morning when she got up, I didn't get to pepper her with, so what was the situation like and what was going on? It was just, I'll come get you. You need me. Just let me know.
You raised the question of your kid tells you that they know somebody who's smoking dope, which just happened to be last week with a freshman boy at TAM. So what do you do with that information?
Again, I'm not the mental health expert, but my daughter came to me. She said, I still want to be friends with these girls. I mean, I like them. And for some of them, if I don't know their parents, I'm not sure that telling them their daughter's smoking pot is going to be a surprise to them. I don't know that. And if I know their parents, and that's been the case, I struggle with violating my daughter's confidence with me in talking to those parents. I struggle with it. I mean, this is what I do for a living. And it frustrates me when I see a beautiful child who's going down a path and I know is just going to hurt them. And I struggle with it. I still do. And I'm not really sure what the answer is.
I am. I don't like that, Bruce. You know, you struggle, yeah, and it's our job. I don't know what else to say. And like I said earlier, they are confiding in us for a reason. It's no secret. And so we can talk to those parents, and he's right. I've talked to parents, and they've looked, they've been like, I know, and they've yelled at me. I've been whatevered. It's all fine. But I knew I tried. I knew that I did, and more importantly, my kid knew I tried. Right? That's the most important part. And you can do something without saying, my kid told me. I actually have lied and said I saw it. I said, I saw your kid smoking pot. I made it me instead of the kid. So I just said it was me. Like, was the kid gonna come beat me up? Like, I could take him, trust me. I was like, no. So I lie often, will say it was me in a lot of situations like that I saw it. In the same way that someone told me, when my kid was doing something bad, guess what I did? I told my kid, this is the greatest, I found out that you did blah, blah, blah. Well, who told you? I'm not telling you. Right? I did it from spying before. I found out that way. I don't give away my secrets. I lie. Because it's not my job is to keep them safe. My job is not to be their buddy or their best friend or respect their privacy. My job is to keep them friggin' safe. I try to respect their privacy as much as possible. But on some level, privacy these days, are you kidding me? They're on Facebook saying, what they ate for lunch and who they're talking to and who's cute. There's not privacy in the way for like it was for us. But definitely do something. They're not telling you for you to do nothing. And sometimes you can even say that to them. So what do you think we should do about that? What are you thinking? You're telling me this. I'm worried about it. What are you thinking? Like, throw it out. See what they say. Like, have the conversation. It's a great place to start. Well, I don't know, but don't say anything to Ginny's parents. Well, I don't know. I feel like we should do something. What can we do? Make it like a thing. I mean, they want to do something. And they might not do it. It's not a sitcom. It's not all done in a half hour. So they might not know in that conversation, but don't have to fix it in a second. Hold it. Come back to it a couple days later. Hey, we were talking about Ginny the other day. What happened with that? Is that still happening? I'm really thinking we should do something. Keep the conversation going until you're ready to do something. But do something. Do something. They're asking you to.
I have to agree, and I have to say that all those lectures when the kids were in middle school and they were, everybody was saying, well, keep you should know the passwords of the computers. You should really have your passwords on your telephones. I mean, that still applies in my home for the high school kids. I have their passwords. It is not their property until they're out of the house and they're paying for it themselves. And I'll tell you that I go through their messages on occasion. Every once in a while when I'm feeling like something's up, there's some hubbub going on, and I don't understand what's going on. And believe me, I've caught a few things that I kind of went, wait a second. Okay, so we're going to have a powwow. I'm going to get together with the friends' parents. I've gotten to know a little community, and it's just that way now. And now I'm getting involved with the Teen Coalition because I want that word out there that my home is going to be the one that you can come and it's not going to happen here. The alcohol is not going to happen. It's not acceptable. I mean, I put myself out there to say, this is what I believe in. And I have to because there are still parents that still believe the fallacies, that it's okay, that they need more independence, that we can trust them. My husband said that the other day, and I almost knocked him in the head. It's like, are you kidding me? But all those things, that privacy issue, it just is nothing compared to their safety. And I may be considered a hovering mom, but until I can see them walk out my door and they're completing college and they're safe and they got their own life, I'm going to be that person.
Also, turn the GPS on their phones. I love that. Well, how do you know where your daughter was? Well, because she called and told me. What does that mean? That's the oldest trick in the book. Turn the Find iPhone on or the GPS. There's lots of tracking systems now. You should know exactly where they physically are with that phone. Make sure they're at Cindy's house.
But don't have yours turned on because they know where
They know you are.
and
Sure.
they know that you're not around there.
Exactly.
You were talking earlier about some of the side effects of marijuana. Where can we get a good list of those? Some
Ooh.
ammunition.
You have some too?
All right, yeah, you got some pamphlets back there.
There's pamphlets on the back.
website.
Which website are you going to do?
So, the Tam High website has a community tab, and under the community tab, it's PTSA. We'll put the website up there so you can go get it right off the Tam
And I
High
have some other
website.
handouts I can
And so for issues concerning young adult marijuana use, it's justthinktwice.com. So www.justthinktwice.com. And for generalized information for parents and educators, you can go to getsmartaboutdrugs.com. There's a lot of a lot of information on there.
Where your kids are going is arrowid.org.
EROID.
It's Arrowid, where your kids go is arrowid.org, EROWID. I've talked to Rain and Fire a few times, who own it, who run it. That's what they name themselves now, Rain and Fire, something like that. They're a lovely little married couple, or together couple. So this is a site where you go, you don't give your kids this site if they don't already have it, but you should know. That's where they go to find out how you beat the UAs, what shows up at the tests, what doesn't, what the drugs do, what the molecular structure is. They actually have very good information on there. I've actually called because they had some misinformation and they've changed it. They have a whole team now. When I first, this literally in like 2000, I remember finding them. And since then, it was just like them with different names. They hadn't renamed themselves yet. And I used to call them because I was doing a lot of teen work at the time. And I would like, you know, you gotta know everybody, right? And so, but now there's like a whole staff. They've grown quite large. And they have every new drug you can imagine, you know, 2CT7 and, you know, smiles and, you know, every drug you want to know what it is when we're talking about, you know, spice and bath salts and K2, well, K2 is bath salt, or even like ketamine, you know, special K or something. Everything is on there, which I've had a lot of people do recently. I don't know why that had to come back. But they're all on there, and all, again, it's from like more of the druggy point of view and like how to keep doing them and how great they are, but that's, and all the effects and everything. People write in, oh, I rolled on this and here's what happened, and I mean, yeah.
While you're having your pens out, a good book that helped me tremendously was Teens Under the Influence, and that's by Catherine Ketchum, and it's co-written by a doctor, I can't remember his name, but you Google that and you'll find it. You probably all have heard of Beautiful Boy. David Sheff is, you know, doesn't live far from here. Another one was, I'll think of it later. The Lost Years is awesome if you want to go down the addiction route.
Have a question here?
My question is related to a little more complex exposure problem than just, you know, friends doing it or I've heard about friends doing it. I'm a stepfather of two boys, 13 and 15, and their father has a drug card, smokes dope every single day. Several of their friends' fathers have drug cards, smoke dope every day, and grow it themselves. And he smokes basically in front of, the 15-year-old smokes, the father smokes in front of both boys, and the 15-year-old, when his father's out, not around, just stepped out for 30 seconds or 2 minutes, will take a hit on his dad's bong, you know, that's available to him all the time, and he's very defiant.
Legally, you're talking about endangered children. There's a number of laws specifically designed for people who create an environment where they endanger children, whether they're their own or others.
Would love to know about that, because it's a real problem.
Yeah, and the real experts of that with Child Protective Services. Yeah.
So you can report that to see. So you're endangering the welfare of a minor. This is under California law, part of what's, you know, child abuse. There's special codicils written into California law around, you know, being around like meth labs, you know, any of that kind of stuff, right? Being in any sort of danger around drugs. But that's, for them, that's not something they're, quote unquote, allowed to do, right? That's like if he was giving them alcohol. Even though alcohol is legal, he can't be giving it to them. He can't let them drink. He can't make it so available. So I'd start with CPS. They'll not like that at all.
So his argument is that he's got a drug card and he's actually presented it in court.
Yeah, no, it's like if so alcohol is legal. If I had my stepson, I don't have one, but my stepson over, but I was letting him drink beer in the house, it's still not legal. It's still endangering the welfare of a minor. It doesn't matter that the actual drug is legal for him. It's not legal for the child. It's endangering the child. So just like if you gave your kid alcohol, that's against the law. You're not allowed to do that. You're endangering them. This is the same thing. He's creating an unsafe environment for a child. So, and that is punishable. It really is. So I've had this case, I've had these before. This has come, as you might imagine, right? This is not a unheard of thing here. And they has been pursued through CPS, and because it's a really hot button issue right now, this minute, they're pursued much more vigorously than they have been in the past.
And that's still one of the limiting points for authority for DEA to pursue marijuana investigations is endangered children. So,
But what does CPS do, really? How does that really play out? Oh, well.
Because we can't enforce anything, so that's a legitimate question.
The two cases I've had, there was, in the two cases I've had that followed through, that the threat wasn't enough, because the threat, trust me, was pretty good in some cases. CPS really came, like the one case, the parent had to keep calling, but they just badgered them. They said, you will go there, or I will sue you. You know what I mean? Or I will call the cop, I will do anything, I will call the press. And CPS doesn't like that. So they went, they checked it out, they put the fear of God into the person, and they stopped doing it. In another case, they didn't stop, and it kept going. But yeah, they'll do it. You just have to stay vigilant on it. Like anything with the government, right? It's not something that's going to happen, if you call in, like there's a drug dealer on my block, it's not going to happen in a second. But if the squeaky wheel gets the grease, as with anything, just don't give up on it. It's still not legal for them to be, they don't have a cop car.
What if they have an illegal, like a medical marijuana card? I spoke to a police officer.
If they have one themselves, there's not much you can do.
In this area, they have had to return kids marijuana because this one kid, he told me this one incident where the kid had a medical marijuana card for tennis elbow.
yeah, actually, I'm aware of one at Redwood right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're 18, there's not much you can do. I mean, you can do other things. You can withhold their money. If someone is living in your home and trust me, then you can do things. It's like saying, well, they're 18, they're adult. No, they're not. If you're financially supporting them, you can stop financially supporting them. You do not approve of what they're doing. Done. End of story. So I think you have more power when they're 18 than you did before. Because before, you can't kick them out of your house. You are legally responsible. 18, you can say, good luck with that. The money you're spending on pot, guess what? Now you're spending on rent. When you make it easy, when they can still stay, it's like, why wouldn't they smoke pot again now? But if you make it hard and say, you're not living on this roof with that, I will not tolerate it, not happening, guess what? They're going to have some hard choices to make. They might go couch surf for a while. Good luck, right? How long is that going to last? No one's going to put up with their sorry butts for too long. And they'll do that like big grown-ups for 10 days, and then they'll be back. They will. It's what happens. Well, I've been doing this 25 years. More than that, I know. But I've been doing this a really long, almost 30 years. And I can tell you over and over and over, it's what I see. It's our job as parents, even when they're 18 and over, like Dee Dee's doing, they're not, right? Their brains aren't developed. 20s, guys, 25. So it's our job to intervene and make it very hard for them if these are the choices that they're making. Very hard, very uncomfortable.
Sorry, one thing I want to just tell you guys is delay, 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 because there are websites, the CDC has one, you can see all the damage it does to the brain, and the younger they are, the more damage it does. And sometimes it takes showing the kids these things to actually kind of get, because otherwise, yeah, my 10th grader says the kids at school are all talking about how it's not really addictive, it's a big conspiracy by the parents. But, sometimes if they see things on black and white, it'll really help. So if you delay that usage, at least you'll delay some of the vulnerability and the brain damage they'll have. So the CDC, you look up like adolescent drug and alcohol use, and you'll find a lot of these, but the government has good ones, and there's other ones, yes.
So we're at the end of our time now. All of our panelists were here on a voluntary basis, and I was nice enough to go out and get them a Starbucks card, but I wasn't smart enough to bring them. So we'll be gifting them with a little gift to Starbucks at a later date. But I'd like to thank them for coming and your contribution tonight.